lots of proud parents out there. So just proud board members, proud everywhere. So just really fantastic. And Jory, you know what you have coming your way. And has everybody had a chance to look at, so then regular meeting now reconvening at 7:10. Has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda? Yes. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion approved. I'm sorry, I just didn't hear Heather, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Pam. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Comments from the public. The board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. The board considers the views of its citizens in its deliberations and welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board listens to public comment thoughtfully and with interest. The board, however, generally does not respond to public comment during board meetings by offering commentary or answering questions. The board also invites commentators and the public to contact the board or the superintendent directly with any specific questions or comments. The board, through the chair and the superintendent, may respond to questions and comments offered during public comment or share directly. And in responding, may also direct members of the public to the appropriate staff member for a response. Are there any comments from the public?
I am Peggy Muir. As most of you know, I am the WEA president, and I have a comment. I'm going to read this if you don't mind. I'm sorry, I usually just fly off the cuff. I can't do that tonight. So the Wilton Board of Education proposed policy 4118.5 last week. I think it's up for review tonight. This policy, which relates employee use of district computer systems and electronic communications, is extreme and invasive and cannot be passed. It is a violation of the Wilton Public School teachers and staff's Fourth Amendment constitutional rights to privacy as guaranteed to us through the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, and based on case law throughout our country, cannot be considered as anything other than an infringement on the Wilton Public School employees' civil rights. The Supreme Court holdings on the topic, as well as the district court rulings, show that this policy is unconstitutional. In 1985, the Supreme Court in O'Connor versus Ortega held that in determining a violation of the Fourth Amendment right has occurred, courts should evaluate two things. One, whether the employee has a reasonable expectation of privacy in the area being searched, and two, whether the search was reasonable under the circumstances. It also stated that the operational realities of a particular workplace must be taken into account when determining whether an employee has a reasonable expectation of privacy. In our case at Wilton Public Schools, the employees are contractually guaranteed a 30-minute lunch, which, I'm sorry, I lost my place. And this policy, passing this policy would imply that staff were unable to use their personal devices even during that 30-minute lunch. In O'Connor, the Supreme Court concluded that the public employer intrusion on the constitutionally protected privacy interests of government employees for non-investigatory work-related purposes, as well as for investigations of work-related misconduct, should be judged on a standard of reasonableness under the circumstances. The reasonableness standard requires that the search be reasonable at the inception and in the scope of the intrusion. This policy in and of itself shows that it does not follow the court-mandated framework. It states that the system administrator and other managing the computer systems may access electronic devices, accessing the computer systems at any time, for any reason, and for no reason. The language of this policy directly contradicts reasonableness standards laid out by the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, I have several other Supreme Court cases that I will not bore you with, but they involve cell phone use. They involve employees using employer given devices, and also the amount that cell phones, personal cell phones of information is on those cell phones. There's a ton of information. So I'm gonna skip that and go to the end, and you're welcome. By passing this policy, the district would be attempting to set precedent that for no reason at all, the district can access the most intimate details of their employees' lives, including but not limited to their photographs, their private communications with their friends and family, all personal electronic mail communications, which may include details of their physical and mental health, and all documents stored on personal devices. This policy cannot be passed. It directly violates the 4th and 14th Amendment rights. I have this information came from a legal note prepared for the National School Board Association by the Council of School Attorneys regarding the 4th and 14th Amendment implications on policies exactly like this one. I have copies if you would like to read them. Thank you for listening to me. I'm going to leave these copies here just in case you want to peruse them. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes personnel changes. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second? Thank you, Nicola. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Under reports and recognition, I would just, the Cider Mill Jazz Band, which we've already been privileged to hear tonight. So again, just extend our appreciation and thank you for coming out tonight. Under the board's chair report, I just have one kind of reminder and plea to the town. Tuesday is our annual town meeting. Off the cuff, I took my kids to Washington, D.C. for spring break. And we are privileged in Connecticut to have a system of self-government and town government that really harkens back to the founding of our country and is really democracy in action. And on Tuesday night, our town will come together and hear from the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen and set a budget and a tax rate for our town that we then vote on. And it's just a privilege to be able to participate in this. And I look forward to seeing as many folks available and able in our town to come out to the meeting. After the meeting, there is voting, and then adjourned voting continues on Saturday morning, Saturday all day at the Clune Center. That's my
Excellent. So continuing just with the theme of the night here on the arts, I'd like you to just turn your attention to the screen. Earlier today, Tammy Thornton shared with us the winners from the 2025 HRA Billboard Recycling Contest. And as per usual, Wilton is very well represented. So it's a 2.5 minute video. Lucille, do you want to just run it for people?
Wow.
Great. So there were 14 towns that participated in that contest. I think
Great.
Tammy said Wilton had 176 entries, and there were 9 regional winners. So great job. Good job on students.
That's
Great.
excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. All right, that's school climate update. Ken, thank you.
So thank you for having me here. I'm Ms. Freeman, who is in our grant funded position in the SEL interventionist at the elementary school, and she's going to be presenting with me tonight. So let me see if I can make this work.
It's always different. It's always our point.
This isn't. There we go. Okay, so you'll probably remember this wheel when I come and present. Wellness is at the center of all that we do when we talk about climate, and these are the different dimensions that contribute to wellness. And we're collecting data on the different dimensions, there's a lot of data to report tonight, lots to celebrate in areas of continued growth. But as I was kind of preparing tonight and thinking about the presentation and the data that we had, I just want to take a minute because, we've been working at this for, I think, about 8 years now since I've been in the position. And the work that goes into being able to look at the data, have data to measure social, emotional, and wellness, it's challenging to have the right measures in place to kind of quantify the work that we're doing. And just thinking about the systems in place and the work that has gone into really being able to put this presentation together. I just wanted to take a minute to then highlight from the teachers that at the elementary level continually assess students' SEL skills and then implement targeted interventions. Our students self-report on screeners and school climate surveys, and then our counselors and mental health staff review the data, progress monitor, and implement targeted interventions. Gaining the support of families and collaborating throughout that work, and recognizing our administrators, school counselors, mental health staff who review and intervene on all of our gaggle reports and reported discipline. And then the teachers are continually asked to focus on building relationships with students and serving as trusted adults. They are the front lines that identify our kids that need higher levels of support, and oftentimes identify kids who are needing crisis intervention. And then again, our school counselors and mental health staff who tirelessly in their efforts intervene on crisis intervention. They assess, they refer, they follow up with families, they collaborate and establish relationships in really trying times. And while they're doing all this, I'm on them to collect data so we can monitor what we're doing and put better or more robust programs in place. So I just wanted to begin by just thanking all of my colleagues and Maria, who's doing this work, and that allows us to kind of take a look at kind of where we are tonight. So thank you. All right, so we're going to start out tonight looking at school climate and relationships and engagement because we just completed our school climate survey. We're in the very early stages of looking at that data and reviewing the data in the building teams. So I'm going to give a very brief overview, and I'll be coming back next year to present a deeper dive in that and what the action plans will be looking at the different schools. Okay, so where we are in the school improvement process is we completed our school climate surveys. I would say January and February are the survey students, staff, and families, and now we're looking at the data and how we can update our climate plans and implement interventions. So here are some highlights on a very high-level overview of the data, and it's pretty exciting here, minus the high school. We'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing there. But these are the areas where we had the greatest change over time. And we've been using Panorama now since the pandemic back in 2020. So we have some longitudinal comparison data. Anything that is 3 percentage points or more is considered statistically significant on the samples that we had. So this is pretty exciting. When we look at school climate, we had an 8-point increase, 8 percentage points from our families and staff. School climate for the high school, you see that -12, and that is all about our cell phone policy, that they're upset. And, we're gonna talk more about that. When we look at the family survey around, school fit, that, went up 10 percentage points. Our staff leadership, really excited to see the emotion regulation because we've had a big focus, since the pandemic on that area in particular. And we've had a statistically significant increase at all 3 schools. And I think that really is reflective of the comprehensive DBT work that we're doing. Student engagement is up, and then sense of belonging at the high school and the middle school. And again, that continues to be an area of focus. So this is the greatest change. So again, just a high level overview. So lots to celebrate there. Then I wanted to the code of conduct was work that we did at the end of last year, of really trying to align how we're responding to discipline across the district and in the buildings, and creating a document that could be student and parent facing to be more transparent about how we respond to behavior. Because oftentimes in situations, well, we can never talk about discipline with families, and that becomes a real sticking point because families want to know, what we're doing to intervene, and we can't really talk about it. But what we can do now with our code of conduct is say, here is the continuum and how we respond to different behaviors. And so that just some data to connect to the work that we've done around the code of conduct. So when we report data through Panorama, it's percent favorable. And so you see in my school, there are clear rules for hurting others. So the feedback there is very high in terms of favorable. And then at your child's school, how well does the overall approach to discipline work? You'll see 86% responded either extremely well, quite well, or somewhat well, and that was an increase of 5 points. And then another area that we continue to focus on in the district is our connectedness, relationship score. And this question we ask continually of our students: is there at least one adult in the building that you feel connected to? You see a nice growth at Cider Mill. Wilton High School, although it had a decrease that's not statistically significant, and at Middlebrook, that's something we'll pay attention to. I mean, we want to get at the 80%, so we're close, but a little dip there. So we'll take a look, and that will probably be part of action plan moving forward. But still, they're in a good place. So I wanted to present some of the climate highlights, and now we're going to talk a little bit. It's been a while since I've given an update on our mental health response data. And again, there's things here to celebrate and things to pay attention to. So you'll see from this slide, we've been collecting data since 2021. And this is the total number of interventions per year, 4-year comparison up until April 28th. So there's been a significant decrease at the high school. However, you'll see a significant increase when we look at our elementary schools, and we're going to look at that a little more closely, talk about what's happening. So here are the types of interventions when looking at the high school. So you'll see, again, a huge drop in students presenting with suicidal ideation. In terms of students attempting, not any information that we have been aware of in 2 years. And then things are pretty stable. You'll see this other incidents here. We got better at coding our data, so we won't have those categories anymore. So this is what it's looking like in terms of our data for the high school. When we look at pre-K 8, so when you look at it at first glance, it's certainly concerning. I want to just make some notes here. So the threat and harm to others. Now, one reason why this is higher is we did significant training at the elementary level on how to respond to threatening behavior using a comprehensive evidence-based approach. So we are using that and looking at it through a different lens and tracking it. So it's going to be elevated because of that. The other piece is that of the 25 students contributed to 11 of those incidents. So we have some repeat situations. So that begs the question of really looking at, do we have a cohort of students that maybe needs a different tier 3 intervention? And that's something that we need to kind of look at Cider Mill and how we maybe approach that a little differently. I will say that kids are using threatening language more than we've seen and at the elementary level. And we can make connections to social media and having cell phones at a young age and the video games and just parents that I've talked to, elementary age kids watching Stranger Things and shows that are developmentally probably way too much for that age. And so we're seeing some of it in the language. And then to talk about the suicidal ideation, again, in that 12 at Cider Mill, only, I believe 2 of those actually needed a mobile crisis type of intervention. So sometimes, again, that's language that kids are using, yet we still need to do a full assessment. Now, at the middle school, of those 9, 8 of those needed mobile crisis intervention. So the situations at the middle school are certainly concerning, and I think needing more intervention with those cases.
But to speak to the elementary level, that speaks to my work with the mental health team and the counselors and the teachers. We are in the process, and right now we actually have kind of integrated items into the lessons that the counselors are providing tier 1 about language and communication. They have a lesson labeled communication, so we're just making sure that it's integrated with the idea of what you say matters, words matter, how you say it matters, to make sure, students are understanding the impact of what they're saying and how it could affect them or others and responses to what they're saying.
So again, having this data to look at through a lens, we can think about, do we need to think tier 1 in a different way? And again, when we think about the large population of 800 students or 900 students, this is a small cohort. However, the work that needs to go in to do these assessments and support these students is something that's significant, and we want to pay attention and we want to move that.
Can I just ask a quick
Sure.
question about that?
Yep.
I'm just wondering, has there been any work to look at, are kids seeing the adult response and understanding that why the adults are being triggered in such a way over their language? Like, are they understanding like the meaning and the intent, or is it just kind of they're looking to shock or say something provocative and know that those are provocative words or language, and the adult reaction is kind of they're not understanding the connection to it? I'm just curious.
Oftentimes it's a regulation piece. They're not able to regulate and they're angry and they're acting out for some kids. And sometimes it could be part of a disability and sometimes not, or an impulsivity piece. So it's something, it's really dependent on the child, and then what are they maybe watching in terms of violent shows or different things like that, and then playing out that, right? And so being able to kind of look at that on a case by case. In all that we do, there's always an education piece and helping the kid understand the impact.
Yeah, I just the threatening language piece just has me like, sometimes kids say something knowing that they're going to get a certain response out of it, but the response that they're really getting is way beyond, because as adults, that type of threat or those type of language has different meaning.
Right, and that's definitely why we're integrating that into like the tier 1 overall for all the students to understand. Words matter, and it has a greater impact than maybe what you perceive or what they are perceiving.
So here's just, another way of, we were tracking downward nicely. You'll see the uptick this year. And again, it's because of some of those incidents happening in the lower grades. And then this is interesting, since we've been tracking in 4th grade, this cohort here up the top, they have had the highest number of incidents, right, in our 7th grade this year. So looking at in 8th grade, what kind of supports, and we're going to keep a close eye on those students next year. So. And then here are the mobile crisis referrals that I was referring to before. If you look at the high school, 2 of the referrals, I believe it was 8 in total, 2 ended up in mobile crisis referrals. 4 students had to be assessed at the emergency room. So although our numbers are down at the high school, the situations that come up are pretty intense, and trying to get those kids into the right level of care is important. And then you'll see, at the middle school, this is the 7th grade cohort where we've had some kids that are really struggling. And then just showing, this is interesting, right? Again, this kind of connects to the violence. When we look at our GAGO filtering software from last year, the top issue was harassment. And this year it's around violence and threatening behavior, right? So it's the connection to kind of what we're seeing around that threatening behavior. And then the red is just to explain, so we filter anything in Google that students are doing, their email, their Google Drive, Docs, et cetera. And we've added web filtering this year. So anything they're searching on the web when they're on the Google Drive, gets filtered. So things will come in as a possible student situation, which is in red. Those are PSSs. We get immediately notified by text and email, and we have to intervene on those right away because typically there's an emergency situation there with the way that that's coming in. The questionable content, those can be, oftentimes they may be related to an assignment or something that is less emergent, but still we need to, confirm that and follow up with those cases as well.
Was that across the district or was
It's
that
across the
just-
district,
was it
yeah, and
across
this
the
is
district?
broken down by buildings. So you see Lowell High School wins the prize on, and we would expect more violations to be at the high school. What is new this year is, as you see, and this has been since January of these incidents at Cider Mill. That's not typical. So again, something that we're looking at. I think the admin team are meeting to kind of look at that data and see what's been going on in the last couple of months of why we're getting those violations. And then the Speak Up is our anonymous tip line. So we've had 4 reports this year. One ended up being a PSS, a potential student situation, the other 3 questionable contact. So students can report fully anonymous, or it can be connected to their drive. We encourage kids to tell a trusted adult. That's always the best way to report. But if this is like a backup option, should they not feel comfortable doing that. And then here's our discipline data, as aligning the code of conduct and aligning that with how we code data in PowerSchool. We now can kind of track our discipline data over time. What's interesting here and important to note, the discipline at the high school is down significantly this year. We had a total of 17 acts of verified bullying last year, and we're at 4 now. And, we really attribute that to cell phones in school. That has had a big impact on that. And then on this chart here is just, this isn't necessarily this isn't necessarily progression here, but of those incidents that you saw on the page before, this is how we may respond to those, or we did respond to those, and it could be a variety of these: in and out of school suspension, detention, depending on at the high school. Kids can have an alternative discipline by having multiple counseling sessions with the outreach counselor, or they meet with their counselor for restorative session, along with in-school suspension. So this is the response to those acts. And then how are we responding to the trends we're seeing? So some of the things, something that's new this year to enhance communication with the police department. And this came as a recommendation from our mental health task force advisory. There's a program called Handle with Care. And basically, if the police go out to a home after school hours and there is a child in the home that may be traumatized by something that went on or impacted, the SROs let me know that handle that student with care the next day. We don't necessarily have to know any information other than handle with care. And then we share that information with any adults that interact with that child, so they know that the child may need some additional support, and we may need to monitor what they might need throughout the day. So that's been super helpful in just wrapping around support for students and enhancing communication. And then we make referrals to the Urgent Crisis Center at Wellmore, which is an alternative to the emergency room, and has really positive feedback of families that have used that service instead of the emergency room, which isn't the best place for mental health crisis. We continue to offer parent education programs, our cell phone free initiative, which we'll hear more about in terms of how that's going. And then continue our screening for early intervention, our DBT programs and threat assessment training that now all of our mental health staff and admin has been trained in. Now, what's in progress, I'm excited to talk about our town partnership. We were able to access the opioid funds to fund what is called Cartwheel. It is a mental health online resource wraparound program that schools are using. It's based in Massachusetts. But we will have 25 spots next year where kids needing like immediate counseling and support, we can refer them into this program. So for our middle school students, they can have counseling virtual. And then for our younger students, they give support to the families as well as the student, and it uses their insurance, so no out-of-pocket cost and immediate referrals. So as we look at our data at Cider Mill and Middlebrook, we'll focus those spots for those students that, because what we find often there's an acute crisis, and now getting them into treatment in a timely manner is not helpful when they have to wait, and then we're trying to provide services in school. So we're excited that we'll be able to pilot that next year. And then we're also looking at a bridge program with Coastal Counseling, which is a agency in Westport. And so they offer a program where they'll come within the district. So students that are either transitioning into hospital setting or out of the hospital setting that need more intensive support before they kind of step down back to a normal day. This would be a wraparound program for them, you know, within our own, within Wilton borders. And then expanding our everyday speech curriculum, which Maria's going to talk about that. And then we're exploring some other wraparound services for high need students, and then CBITS and Bounce Back, which are evidence-based trauma group programs. That's something we're exploring that might help some of our younger kids that are struggling. All right. So the proactive measures, really looking at kind of our overall LCDL curriculum and universal screening, and I'm going to introduce Leah, who's going to talk about the social skills, social emotional skills, and her position and what she's doing at the elementary. So you'll remember we were awarded the mental health specialist grant. We're in year 2 now. We have to absorb next year a small portion of funding for that grant, and then in the following year, the full. And so I thought it would be a really good time for Maria to kind of talk about how she's supporting teachers at the lower levels and some of the work that she's doing.
Thank you.
Yep.
So to kind of echo Kim's statement in the beginning, you know, the teachers and the staff have been great. You know, they are the front lines, like Kim said, doing a lot of this work, and it's been great to be able to collaborate with them. You know, they're always willing and accepting and wanting, you know, help if needed, and doing a lot of great work. So here I have just a little screenshot of the scope and sequences. The one on the left there, a little upper, is going to be Miller Driscoll's, and then the lower right is Cider Mill. So that's their scope and sequence for their social emotional learning. That's on a larger spreadsheet, which has, you know, all the months of the school year, of course. You can see that Miller Driscoll has it broken out week by week because they are following the everyday speech curriculum, which provides 40 weeks worth of lessons for them. Cider Mill has it more per month. They're providing those 2 lessons. Here you don't see the specific lessons because that's on a different worksheet within that workbook for them, but I wanted to show everyone here how we're also connecting the counseling lessons and for Cider Mill, the connection of that 5th special, that health and wellness, where those DBT lessons are being given. So we're really trying to be thematic and purposeful with how we're integrating these SEL lessons, and also having that cohesion between both Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill, and even up at Middlebrook. I know we were talking about kind of theming the whole district, you know.
Absolutely.
Yep. So this is a little bit more about everyday speech. They have tier 1 that the teachers are utilizing, and then there's a tier 2 and 3 that the mental health staff, the counselors and the psychologists can utilize. I have used the program before I came to Wilton. I truly enjoy it. As a social worker, it was super helpful. And I think it's great for the teachers to have something that I say is like a point and shoot camera. The lessons are all there. They have nice videos, they have reflection questions, they have group discussion questions. So it's really easy to integrate it for the classroom teacher into the work they're doing. And it's nice as well that tier 2 and 3 also are working off the same platform. So then the teachers can be aware of what they're working on within, the counseling office and bring it back to the classroom. So they have the same access to the programs, and they can even click on the same video and review it as a whole class if they want to, or just pull out a piece of it and, talk about a certain question to guide some discussion. So this data is from Everyday Speech. When we had met with Everyday Speech, they had pulled this for us in the past 180 days, how much it is being utilized. And those are the 5 CASEL competencies. So you'll notice at the bottom 2, relationship skills and responsible decision-making aren't utilized that much, but that's because they're not within that curriculum just yet. That's not where they're at. The teachers aren't in that section just yet. They're working towards it. So it makes sense that self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, those are the units that have been utilized so far. But of course, teachers are open to utilize whatever they feel is the need and they want to address within their classroom. They say, hey, there's some peer issues. Yeah, of course, jump ahead and do, lesson 40. That's fine. They're able to do that and have the autonomy to address the needs within their classroom. So this is just a little screenshot so everyone here can understand what it looks like for a teacher on their end. This is first grade. They have it, for the other grades as well, of course. But you'll see there where it says unit 1, self-awareness, and then, each unit is labeled one of the different CASEL competencies. On the right-hand side, you see where it says open unit. If you were to click that in the actual program, then you would have all your lessons right within there. And each lesson, would say the power of yet or growth mindset. You click that and it's a nice lesson plan for the teacher, as well as then it will say student lesson and gives you the videos and the questions, or sometimes it's like a game or activity that you can do in like a craft, depending on the grade level. So again, I just want to show you guys how the ease of access really, I think, makes it, so in regards to assessing the social emotional learning that's occurring in the classroom, we utilize the DESA. It is a state approved strengths-based assessment. So we have good participation in this because it is a
Passive consent.
passive consent. Thank you, Kim.
So parents can opt their children out of this assessment.
So you see there, total students assessed was 743. This is looking at Miller Driscoll, these 2 charts. So we do it pre, mid, and post. So we're coming up on the post now, this time frame. So you can see from the pre to mid at Miller Driscoll, you'll notice the need is dropping from that 4% need for instruction, and then 3% for the mid-year. Notice the 70% for the pre, which is the typical range. That blue means typical. And then your 63% for mid, which it's like, oh no, that dropped. However, if you look at the green, you see the growth where you see 26% for the mid, that's the strength. And now you're in 34. So we've had some nice gains. So really, if you're looking combined the typical and the strengths, you've made some gains there in that green section for sure. This is looking at just one specific cohort, our current second graders. Up top is their pre-DESA scores, and then on the bottom there is their post-DESA scores. So overall, you can see that green, that strengths increasing over the course of the year. So we don't have that post yet for this year, but projections can show that ideally that will continue to increase from year to year. Now you have the 2034 cohort and 2033. So those are our third graders on the left and our fourth graders on the right. I just have their post scores there just to make it easier viewing wise. But again, that green, that strengths is increasing for both cohorts.
Okay, BEST is our universal screener, and another screener that we use. It's different than the DESA. This is a screener for at-risk behavior. You'll see up there internalizing, externalizing school and adaptive skills. Because this is a different, more of an at-risk screener, we need active consent for this. And so you'll see the participation rates are not as high as the DESA due to that. However, we did have a big push to try to get more information out to families and share this at back to school night. So we did get a higher participation rate than we have in the past at Middlebrook at Cider Mill, almost 50%, and we're still low at the high school. So something for us to continue to work on and think about. But of the students that did participate, 89, almost 90% end up in the typical range. We have 6 in the elevated and about 3% in the extremely elevated. So small number of kids in the elevated and extremely elevated. And then do you want to talk a little bit about how we
intervention.
intervention
Yeah,
for
so-
those kids?
Yeah, so the best screener helps inform how we create our intervention groups, and the students that we, the counselors then pull in for those tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. And we have different groups for them, and we can also have them re-rate for the best screener at the end to see the assessment and see the growth within those skill ranges. Also, this talks more about kind of going back to the tier 1 and seeing, is there something that we should be putting in place tier 1 overall for these students, just to help address the needs globally at the school level.
And then for students at the middle school level, there's executive functioning groups, there's a DBT tier 2 group or a class at tier 3, depending on, what the need is of the student. So trying to catch these students earlier on to skill them up so we don't have as many crisis interventions is the goal with this screener. And then we also screen, so the best was in grades 3, 6, 8, and 9. We are using the suicide SOS screener in grade 10. Again, you'll see over the 3 years. So the first 2 years, we did the entire 10th grade class in PE and health at one time. We're breaking it out in fall and spring and just doing it in health this year. It's a little more manageable, but you'll see the trends, are trending downward, just like our emergency interventions, which is a good thing. We're also piloting this. We piloted this in grade 7 for half of the grade this year, and we'll be going to full implementation next year. So at each grade, there'll be some type of screening that happens. Again, we need, for this screener, parents can opt their students out because it's part of the curriculum. So they get a lesson in the classroom, and then they take a screening. And then just Tanya wasn't able to be here tonight, but just to talk a little bit about what we're doing or what happened this year at the middle school is there's grade level SEL team meetings. And so the focus was on executive functioning groups for tier 2 and then DBT groups for the tier 2 as well in grade 6 and 7 that were implemented. And then you can see some of the different focuses in grade 6, 7, and 8. So really looking at the needs of that grade and then in terms of what they might need SEL wise and being responsive kind of to what the teachers are seeing. We are looking at, I'm just going to go ahead. These slides got a little mixed up, but next steps here are continue to focus on charters. They did grade level charters this year rather than the kids going in different classrooms and having different charters. They did grade level. It was much more comprehensive. And I think the kids were able to kind of acquire kind of the skills around that more quickly. We continue the monthly SEL team meetings. There was a creation of a student advisory council, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in a minute. They really kind of tried to be systemic about morning announcements and connecting that to the SEL themes that were happening monthly to kind of, again, have a more comprehensive approach. So students were kind of getting the same message over time. And then they'll be working again this summer to even refine that more and align the lessons more targeted, probably particular assured experiences that kids will get in 6, 7, and 8. How do I go backwards? So just to kind of end, looking at safety, belonging, and welcoming environment, we spent some time. So this is some information about the Climate and Culture Student Advisory at the middle school. Again, they focused on, the kids really helped with the grade level charters. They did a PSA around the school climate to engage the kids in participation, and then participated in Project Belonging. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. This is, we engaged with Teachers College, Columbia University faculty and staff with a project called Belonging. It's a student-driven program aimed at developing resilient and connected communities. And so the kids kids were nominated. We have a group at the middle school and a group at the high school of about 30 kids in each building. They went through 5 hours of training, and the training really kind of built a common language through key concepts around othering, peer rejection, what belonging means, and educational displacement. Then they learned techniques to foster belonging within their classroom and community, and then shared experiences and strategies to build a collaborative environment. They get $1,000 to create a budget and implement a project within their school community. So they just finished the training, and both schools, it's funny, their projects are kind of similar. So Middlebrook's proposal is called the Tree of Belonging. And it's going to be this type of structure where when the kids come in, they create a leaf and kind of tie that to how they belong at Middlebrook. Teachers will be involved in it as well. And then there'll be some way they take that with them when they leave. And then at the high school, their proposal is called All Hands In. It's going to be some type of mural where there'll be an activity and advisory to kind of launch it with some type of celebration, and the kids will leave their handprint with a word connected to belonging. It's still in the development stage, but as kind of a visual symbol. And then part of the training really talked about sharing your story. And so they want to include a segment in the Morning Warrior where we're getting kids to volunteer to do a piece where they can share kind of their story. And you can learn something about students that you wouldn't necessarily know by just sitting with them in a classroom. And so that's really how kids can kind of get to know each other better. So again, they'll build the budget. They have the money to create the project. There's schools around the area that are involved. They're going to be sharing their proposals and hearing what other schools are doing. So we're in the early stages of it, but the kids that are involved are pretty excited about it. So, and then the last thing, I don't have a slide for this, but we're excited about is we're collaborating with Bill and the LLC to do a summer Wilton Reads around digital citizenship. That's picking books that are developmentally age appropriate across the buildings. At the high school, we'll be doing Accountable, and hoping that will be, we're still ironing things out with English, but maybe a required read for 9th and 10th graders. And we have confirmed the author to come visit in November to do school assemblies as well as a community. So we're really excited about that work, which is in the works. And that's our update. Any questions?
So we're just opening up to questions. I just want to say that I'm thrilled about the Wilton Reed Summer program, and I've read Accountable actually. And I think it's a powerful teaching tool. And the fact that then the author has agreed to come, that's a powerful teaching tool. And the author herself is a powerful example of, you know, how you can move communities and be involved in communities through journalism. So I think even tying that in with the larger vision of the learner, just in both ways, I think that's really a tremendous opportunity for our kids. And I hope, you know, I don't know what the thought is in terms of 9th and 10th, but there's a possibility, I think, that some of her message would be even accessible to Middlebrook age students in maybe more of a dialogue kind of format as versus the reading material, but in terms of the themes and how you become accountable for your behavior.
We haven't landed on a book yet for the middle school.
Okay.
It's a little tricky there.
Yes.
Common Sense Media doesn't recommend, I think it's.
No, I don't think that
Yeah,
the
not
book
the book.
itself is the right
But the
format, but the theme.
Yeah.
The idea of it,
The
yeah.
idea of it, I think, is certainly something that would be powerful in that school. As well.
So not everybody will be, it will be required reading, we're still working, but everybody will do some type of activity in English. So to excerpts from it, or English and advisory, again, we're working out the details, but it's exciting.
Well, it's even just community building when you have a whole
Exactly.
community working on a same book, a same project, a same theme that is woven into, every kid connecting to each other about one particular thing. I think also lends itself. Does anybody have any
You've done a
questions
lot of
for
work.
Kim or?
It's a lot of good work.
Great teams of people across the buildings doing.
I had just a couple questions.
Sure.
From some of the data we saw earlier in the presentation.
Yeah.
Do we have any initial hypotheses as to the spike at Cider Mill?
Well, I think we're looking at it through a threat assessment lens, and we're coding it differently, which, so that in one sense, but
Meaning, so when you say you're coding it differently, meaning that
we weren't. coding
maybe the
assessments.
increase is not as drastic as we think because.
Yeah. It's not just Wilton. When we had our task force meeting, in fact, Silver Hill Hospital is working right now to create a program for elementary age, because schools across the area, across the country, we're seeing this dysregulation in our younger learners. We can make speculations of why that is, but I don't think there's, definitive, but I would suspect it has to do with what they're doing and what they're seeing gaming and online, and kind of how early they're getting access to smartphones and what they're doing on them. Some of the language has been normalized, or the behavior has been normalized. And we know that there's a deficit in terms of skill building and coping skills. So the regulation pieces, not being able to control themselves. So you're seeing more outwardly aggressive
And are
language.
we able to validate those hypotheses by just talking to the students and trying to understand what led to the event, or what are the other tools at your disposal to figure that out?
Yeah, I think there's because we have some kids that are repeating this, even with interventions in place, it's like we need to be supporting these kids in a different way. So thinking about that small cohort of students that are really struggling, of like, how do we support them in a different way? And
Sort of like a Genesis. Some kind of place where they can go and be safe.
they can be in, I think, creating more support within the mainstream for them. Yeah, and having a place to skill up.
Yeah.
When they're,
Yeah.
and some of it is helping the teachers with skills within the classroom. We talked about like emotions belong in the classroom, and when you pull the kid out and teach them when they're regulated, that's not going to help them
Right.
learn how to manage,
In the-
right, when in the moment. So how can we work with supporting in the classroom in the moment, and supporting our teachers with some of those skills in the classroom as well.
And that transference piece is that big piece, like how do you transfer
Skill
the
acquisition.
skill attribution in a controlled environment to when all of a sudden you're not in a controlled environment. And I think that's, the bigger.
So they
bigger
may need
question.
daily skills, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's what, not
Until they
necessarily an
internalize it.
alternate environment, but daily skills, so they can, acquire those more quickly.
And I think I just wonder, because the environment that our kids are now living in and growing up in terms of technology and, outside influences and resources, that's not changing, to some extent. So it's like, are the tools and methods that we have, are they keeping pace with this like kind of new, the new reality? Like, are the skills that we're teaching our kids or the way we're delivering that skill to them sufficient, given the change in environment that we've seen over the last 8-10 years? That's a larger question, but I just.
Well, the fact that our younger kids are struggling, that's really scary. that our younger kids are really having a hard now or showing signs of behaviors that normally you would see in a middle or a high school. That's very concerning, because if we don't sort of tackle that now, at that age, it's not gonna get any better, it's just gonna get worse.
Is there a parent piece that's being addressed? Because at a young age, parents surely have a big role to play.
And I think that's, we had 2 years ago, we had the cell phone program, and we had one at Cider Mill specifically, Jen, to try to partner with parents to help. And this was the teachers sharing about what they're seeing in the classroom. The parents that were there were shocked. And I think it really made people rethink things. The problem is we didn't have enough, there was a very small number of people there. So it's, how do we get the message out? How do we get the message out for parents to hear? So we'll be doing more of that.
Do something that's not just in person, but you're making videos that people can watch at their leisure that's getting this message out. Because
Actually, we embedded some of the information at back to school night. We got good feedback on that. So I think trying to give the message when we have a
During
captive
the shared
audience.
captive
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The youth council tracks, like they have a lot of recorded programs, and
Yeah.
people tend to not find time to watch them. I mean, I have a bunch of things to watch in my own inbox, and so it's hard. It's hard with the hands, I think, to make the time to kind of pay
I think
attention to that.
another piece of that is, the rollout of everyday speech into that third grade
Yeah.
for Cider Mill and
Really
integrate,
excited about that.
they have the morning meeting, but then integrating a piece of that emotional regulation, for that grade level will be helpful at Cider Mill. And I think to speak to your point before about the data, and so you're saying, well, why are they kind of saying these things? I think Kim's other data about showing how many referrals are actually going to like a mobile crisis referral from those larger numbers, right? It was small. So it could be more just around, like I said, the education, those communication lessons about what you're saying, even in DBT, those lessons in that health and wellness special about, what you say has a true impact. And is it just that they are understanding that and helping the education piece, and also maybe for parents too, right? And saying, let's talk about this a little more at your dinner table and why it's important and how you're relaying these messages overall as a family.
So that actually was, you brought up how everyday speech is going into third grade. So that was my question. Is it a K-5 curriculum? Is it like
It's
a
K-12 actually.
K-12?
It is new at the high school, but right now we're going slowly.
Okay.
Chuck likes to
I
say.
just,
Going slowly and collecting data.
just because in terms of just, if we're seeing it younger and like the vertical integration between the schools, like same language, same understanding, same modules, really help with like routines. And then if you're in the routine of that, then I feel like the kids, you get greater impact.
And then the tier 2 piece, so because some of the work is siloed, right? And so that the mental health staff can be collaborating with the teacher, and Maria's role, you didn't really talk about, but Maria does a lot of that kind of crossover to kind of make sure that the skills, the teacher has what she needs to, because that's where kids are gonna acquire it more quickly, is when we're all working towards the same goal.
Kim, one of the other things you shared, I think on that same slide, was the dramatic increase at the high school. And you attributed it to potentially to the cell phone policy.
Oh, the school climate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we substantiate that?
Well,
Questions.
it is a good question. And Bob and Amy are probably going to talk a little. When you look at the free response data from the kids, they're angry about the fact that we took the cell phones away. So, so we have to talk about, okay, what do we, yet when you look at the discipline data, it's way down. So it's working, and
So something is happening.
Yeah,
For sure.
it is. And I think it's hard. I mean, I get it. I would, if I was a junior or senior, that's hard. I've had it my whole life. And what are you doing? But I think over time, and as more schools move in this direction, and kids, I think we're hearing from some, I'm sorry that wait so long. As much as they don't like it, I think when you talk to kids one-on-one about it, there is a ease, like there's a relief.
And so I was referring to the decrease in bullying cases.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It wasn't am I happy about it? I'm not surprised at that. There was a big decrease in bullying, which you said you thought was attributable to the cell phone policy. I was curious, what gives you the confidence that that is the case?
They're gonna talk to that.
We got some slides about that.
Can I just ask it one more question about data collection? Do you know if all of the talk about wait until 8 for cell phones, is it having any effect? Are there less kids turning up at Cider Mill with cell phones these days?
You don't allow them, so I can't monitor what they're doing. More parents are talking about it, I can tell you, I have conversations with parents that are wanting to wait until 8 and giving them reasons why and telling them some of the things that, you know, you may be leading into. But we've had, is it safe to say we've had some text thread, things like that in the past, we've had less of that this year. Group chats and things like that have gone bad very quickly, which it will at the elementary developmentally, they're just not, I mean, you think about threatening some of the words that they may be saying in school, they're gonna say them on text and then we're gonna record of that, right? And so we were responding to a number of those things in the past, that's down. So maybe as a community.
Are the most challenged. There's always something.
Yes, there'll always be work to do.
There's always the rub.
You gotta try to stay ahead of it.
But I think we can really see the movement over time about like where we were, where we've come, how, I think it's great that we're combining almost like tier 1 and tier 2 together, like in the classroom, because you're right, behavior does belong in the classroom. And I think that that's a fundamental part, I think, of even making a community of kids that are forgiving of each other because they're all surrounded by it and supporting it and living it. So I want to thank you. I'm excited to see the Middlebrook and high school projects when they come together. And always my one question always is, you know, is there something that we can be doing as a board to better support?
Cider Mill, especially.
It needs to be full talk.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep her, so that we'll be looking to. Next year.
Thank you.
It's a lot of information. Thank you.
Thank you. You need room for the kids.
Well, we'll grab another chair. Get 3 chairs. Our special guests, a couple more chairs,
Thanks for coming out on a Thursday night, guys.
right from practice, right from work. Hey, Grace, yeah, why don't you come right in? And then let's stay. Welcome. Thanks for having us. Well, yeah, thanks for having us. It's good to see everybody. And I know you're very interested in our cell phone free school initiative, as I say. Everybody is, including neighboring districts. So we're excited to share with you tonight. I'm honored to introduce Dr. Amy Korn, who's been instrumental in the implementation of this plan. Amy has been a rock star and done such great work. And then we have Grace, Liam, and Zach, and I'll let them introduce themselves. They are juniors, so they have a vested interest in what we're doing, and they're knowledgeable, and they're going to kind of tell it like it is. They'll attest to the fact that I said, you just speak objectively and speak your truth, right? They're not chosen for any particular purpose. And they did participate in the visits with Weston and Darien and Westport. They did very well. We didn't know what they were going to say then. We don't know what they're going to say now, but they're going to be honest with you, right? So introduce yourselves. Grace, thanks for coming right from tennis.
I'm Grace Johnson. I'm a junior. I don't know what else to say. I'm happy to be here and share my thoughts about the cell phone free initiative.
Yeah, I'm Liam Joy. I'm also a junior. And yeah, just thanks for having us and letting us kind of speak how we feel about the whole policy.
I'm Zach Mangino. I'm also a junior. And yeah, I mean, I think I've been decently involved, and I know so is Grace, because we're both on the executive board at the school. And we've worked with Dr. O'Donnell and Dr. Korn a little bit about implementing this policy, and I think it's been great to be a part of that, and it's, as all three of us said, we're happy to be here.
As a student, so glad to have them. So we have a brief presentation for you, and then we'll turn it over to the students, let you hear from them a little bit. For starters, thank you for supporting our proposal. You'll think back to the fall where you had to approve this and approve the policy. It is not always easy, you make difficult decisions, but at that time we told you, please trust the educators. You remember that, and you did so. And we're going to have some very positive things to report about the 4 different goals. I will fully acknowledge that if you give the students the opportunity to share anonymously their views about taking their cell phones away on a survey, we're going to get those type of results, but you're going to hear in a minute here, we're in year 1, and I think we made some good progress and there's good indicators thereof. So I want to commend all of our students. We said right away that it has to be built on trust, try to be open-minded, give this a chance. I think the students were almost overwhelmed at first when they thought we're going to lose our devices. And you heard the term the ban, and we said, we're not really banning them. It'll be a restriction. You're going to get them before and after school. And really they've stepped up for the most part. There are still some students, to be fully transparent, who don't like this at all. And I think the students who've processed through this and experienced the transition, many of them would say, you know what, we're starting to see some of the benefits. I think you might hear that from some of the students here as well. So a good collaborative effort. And then again, we're in year 1. So you may recall that Dr. Smith outlined 4 clear goal areas. What we want to do tonight is we want to show you those goals. You have the hard copies with you. And then we're going to provide some direct evidence of kind of how we're moving the needle. To Patrick's question on goal 1, you'll see some direct responses from our highly qualified mental health professionals. So Dr. Korn has the next slide.
So first of all, you may recall that we decided initially to delay the start, largely based on feedback and just wanting to hear from more people. We kind of backpedaled and did some visits with different people. We visited with our students in our Flex program. We had some parent talks, parent coffees, where we heard from the parents. And then we also took a lot of feedback from the students and waited till after homecoming, because we didn't want, especially our seniors, to feel that they had lost that opportunity for their last homecoming. And most recently, today, as a matter of fact, our seniors had asked if they could use their phones to take pictures because it was their college sweatshirt, t-shirt day. So we did allow the seniors to do that. So we have continued to kind of work with them through those opportunities to find appropriate times. I would say we had, as Bob just shared, Westport came first to kind of look at our cell phone free schools. We hosted pretty large contingent from there. They did bring 2 of their student leaders from their school newspaper. They were absolutely blown away when they went to our cafeteria to see students actually interacting in the cafeteria. I think the quote, and I may not have this 100% correct, was they had not been in an environment that large where nobody had a cell phone, and probably since COVID had happened, and they were just absolutely blown away and couldn't wrap their heads around it.
Students or adults, they said, largely.
And then we hosted a visit with Weston and Darien as well, and we invited our students here to join us for that. And like Bob said, we had no idea what they were going to say, if it was going to be good, bad, ugly, who knew. And they, I think, to the person, walked out of here and we're like, we have to do this. We need to make this happen in our schools. There was one student I recall vividly that came in, I forget if I think she was from Weston, and she was like, no way, no how is this happening in my school? I'm here because I want to fight it. By the end of the day, she was smiling. She was talking to these guys and she was like, I think we can do this. I want to try it. So they've seen the transformation, and these are, our educator colleagues from nearby districts that now actually want to give this a try. So I think that speaks to a lot of the success too. When we at the outset spoke to a lot of other schools, which we've circled around to, some of the high schools that have tried this, they really said you have to give it a few years. Our seniors, obviously this was a big push for them in their final year.
the Torrington, who's had this for quite a while now, said, really wait till you're freshmen or seniors to really kind of evaluate and see how successful it's going to be, because you'll see as time goes on, kids will just think this is part of what we do here. And then this kind of gets to your question from earlier, Patrick, about the infractions. We've had 237 infractions, which I thought seemed high up until we spoke to Torrington and the other school, which were probably triple, if not quadruple, what we had. We were actually getting very nervous post-February break about where we were with infractions, and I felt much better after that phone call. And it's really leading to us having to make 2 to 3 phone calls a day to parents, because our first infraction, we do call every
Infraction
single
means that
parent
they have the
that
phone.
they have the phone and they've been caught somewhere in the building with it out. So they can have it in their bag as long as it's not seen. And by bag, I mean their backpack. So we do call the parent for every single student when they're caught the first time. So it's really not raised that infraction number that much. I would go back to kind of the bullying question you had earlier, and I would tell you last year we had a binder full of bullying cases for just 1 year. We don't even have a quarter of one filled for this year. That's how significant the impact is. And as one of the APs, I work on those cases very heavily. I can tell you probably 90 to 95% of them involve some type of cell phone violation, or did in the past, and we're not seeing that right now.
How does that 237 break down across the 4 different grades? Does it skew heavily towards the older grades?
I know we looked at that a while ago. The sophomores were slightly higher, but they're a bigger class. They're also 40 bigger. So when you take that into consideration, that them and the seniors were pretty close in the number. The sophomores definitely, or the freshmen, excuse me, definitely the least.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We started in November, as you recall, so we wanted to break it down on the average per day. I looked at it again today. I mean, there were some days early on where there were 5 or 6 or 7, and now it can spike a little bit, but you know, we're trying to do things to address it, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So Dr. Smith, I think thoughtfully outlined 4 goals for what we are all working on together. And this is the first one, which you can see was to improve mental health. So this talks about cell phones' contribution to anxiety, stress, and mental health challenges. And then what the impact of a cell phone-free high school can be there in terms of alleviating some of those issues. And I'm going to show you 4 direct quotes from our mental health professionals taken this week. You know, we asked them, we showed them this, we said, how is this working? And so these are from our highly trained school psychologists, our school social workers, and actually our flex teacher. And you can see here, I actually spoke with them this week and gathered these quotes. Decreased anxiety, fewer distractions, fewer peer conflicts. The amount of time students would come to not just mental health professionals, but administrators and say, look at this. This is what this person posted about me or for me. I need your help. It's all around the school. And so that is decreasing. The social issues and the peer conflicts. This is really compelling. I think the second part of quote number 2, right from one of our school sites, students are spending more time in classes. They're not leaving class as much for mental health issues. That is huge. You know, we had these students spend a lot of time down in, you know, the flex wing or the mental health wing, and that has decreased. So clearly when you see some of the data that Kim has presented, that kind of fleshes that out a little bit. The third quote is from our flex teacher. She does outstanding work, and Dr. Smith and I and Dr. Cohen visited that group. They had some concerns. Are they going to need their phones? They may rely on them more because they have more significant anxiety or mental health issues. These kids have been fine. I was in there again today. I go in there frequently. They have their challenges still, but they don't have the challenges resultant from having cell phones and these conflicts on Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever it was that was causing them issues. So you can see that improvement there. And then this is a quote. I mean, if you read the 4th one, you hear about joy, playing games, socializing with each other, which we'll present another slide on that. So we actually have more of these. These are just 4 of them. They all were eager. I will tell you this, the mental health professionals, when we were delaying the opening to get this right, they were like, when are we starting? When are we starting? And what we did, it was like an ovation. So they, in our students of concern meetings, it is helping. And it is helping significantly, but let's give it some time. Okay. Goal number 2, Dr. Korn.
So goal number 2, you might recall, was all about enhancing academic focus. I would share with you that within a half hour of our first day of implementation, the school building was changed. Kids, when they walked out of class for breaks or walked out to go to the bathroom, they weren't right on their phones right away. When they had breaks from class, they were actually talking about what had just happened in class, their learning environment, what they were learning. They were talking to their teachers. They weren't checking in on what's going on outside. I really feel in terms of the academics, if you think about the vision of a learner, it's really helped to actualize that across the different attributes and make it much more seamless in our building. So again, similarly to the last goal, we quickly today, Bob actually just today sent the teachers an email, our instructional leaders, and asked them for some feedback, and that's what's here on this slide. You will see it has been transformational for teachers in that they're not feeling that they have to police this. They've probably gotten hours back of instructional time in the long term. Just not having to police this at the beginning and at the end of class.
So goal 3, this was to promote connection through face-to-face interaction. And I will tell you here, and I think you'll hear that from some of our students here, some of the student naysayers on the survey, I was speaking with some of them this week in the cafeteria, just trying to get a broader picture. Even the students who are still saying, you know, we might miss our phones. We think maybe we should have them during breaks. We think maybe we should have them in the cafeteria, but we'll give them up in the classroom, are saying, we recognize we're interacting with each other. Look at us here in the cafeteria. I mean, these are quotes from these kids. So that has transformed it. Rather than, I mean, students used to walk in, they were on their cell phones, and they're in the front lobby right away, they're on their cell phones. The hallways, when the students were on breaks or when they were sitting there, you heard me portray this to you when we got ready to launch. They're sitting there in the hallways, they're on their phones. They might be talking a little bit, but they're, you know, there's not a lot of face-to-face interaction. The cafeteria's been transformed. The breaks now, for example, yesterday, I was up on the 3rd floor taking care of some business, and there was a group of boys walking around, they're on break, no cell phones, talking, laughing, a little too boisterously. Actually, I tell them, calm down, classes are going on, but they were talking to each other, and I guarantee you, you know, a few short months ago, they would have been seeking their phones and doing something different. So all of those environments have really been different. And I know this is a text-rich quote, but we had a bunch more of these type ones about this particular goal. But I thought that this school counselor just kind of summed it up. If you read that, it just talks about how refreshing it is. The adults that come into the building say, game changer, right? I'm telling you, the educators from Weston and from Darien and from Westport that came to spend their times, and I love their schools, I love their principals. But if they came from their schools, which they did, and they saw this environment where they didn't see any cell phones, now you see there's infractions. We have ways of finding them, you know, the 237, but they came in and they were just enamored by the possibilities. So that is going on a lot. And then finally, goal 4 and some evidence, and then we're going to hear from our students. Dr. Korn, I wanted to be crisp here. Dr. Korn.
Sure. So some of this we've already talked about, supporting positive behaviors. We really feel that it's helped to mitigate issues around cyberbullying. I mentioned earlier how much there's been a decrease in our online behaviors that we've had to address mainly in the office. And then similarly, some of the positive promotion that we've been able to do of good behaviors through some of our own social media channels has been really helpful and useful, and it's something we want to continue to grow. And then these, again, are some quotes from some of our mental health staff in terms of how they're seeing such a decline in their student visitors and kind of talking about the cyberbullying, the social comparison. One of the things we were finding a lot is girls in particular looking at people online, and weight issues was coming up a lot. There's a lot of things around anorexia and behaviors that are kind of proven through social media that it's almost encouraging those things. And we've seen a decline even in that, if you speak to our mental health staff, because they're not accessing it as frequently during the school day and comparing themselves to others. So with that, I think we're gonna turn it over to our students just to share some of their experiences and their feedback openly and honestly. We have not prepped them. And we want you to hear from them, and feel free to ask them any questions you might want to ask as well.
What's it been like from you? You've been here a couple years already. And as I said, you have a vested interest in the future. We wanted juniors. So, what's it been like? What's the transition been like? The pros, the cons, and what are your thoughts on it? I told you, I said we have a very receptive, kind Board of Education, and they love hearing from students.
Tell me about lunch times as well. I want to hear about that.
All right, well, I'll start with that even. So I want to say within the first week of implementing it, which is in my experience where the most pushback from students was like, and I'll kind of get into that later. I told the story at, I think it was Westport, where I was when the school came in and came to talk to us and the administration. We were sitting at lunch, and it's just such a different feeling being in the cafeteria. Like Mrs. Corn said, like with the quote from the student, like so many people, none of them on their phones, everyone's talking, having a good time and smiling. And I think someone at my lunch table, we were having a weird debate about grapes, and someone brought up the question, what % of a grape is water? And someone goes to their pocket, and their phone's not there to look it up. And people are like, oh, if only we had our phones. But then 20 minutes later, we were still talking about, you're still debating, this kid says 60%, this kid says 40%. And it might sound like a kind of a funny example, but if that kid's phone was in his pocket, that conversation would have ended then and there. And no one would have been laughing, no one would have been smiling 20 minutes later if that hadn't happened. So I think that's kind of a strange but good example of how they really, the phones, I don't think people realize they will shut down conversations, they will end kind of a good time.
So initially I can remember exactly where I was when I opened up the email that said, we're gonna be rolling out this cell phone free school. I was sitting on my couch with my dog, and I'm scrolling through the email, and it's like you're not gonna be able to have smartwatches, AirPods, or your phone. And initially, like the AirPods, that really I was worried about that, because that's how you sit in the library, you put in earbuds to kind of just like block out everything and you just work. But the school, they listened, they ended up taking that away. So I think that's like just the school listening to what we have to say and what's actually important to us and we can use in the correct way to benefit ourselves is really important. So thank you guys. And understanding that this was such a drastic change and actually like delaying the implementation was really big, because obviously for the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, they've been in the high school before, but this is like it's completely new. But you have the freshmen who have never been in a high school setting before, and understanding that they have to get accustomed to high school and then high school without phones. So I think the administration did a really great job rolling everything out.
Yeah, I really agree with what Zach and Liam have been saying. One thing I noticed from even just like today, this afternoon, in my AP US history class, we went on a walk outside after our test, which is really nice. And I just said to my friend who was walking with me, I was like, it's so crazy to think like a year ago we had our phones, like we would take our phones with us whenever we would walk outside, like. And that's kind of just a random story, but it's true. Like we really used to have our phones in every aspect of the school. Like even if you weren't using it in class, like I remember sometimes in some of my classes, I would have it on my desk, and like that's crazy to think about now. Or, using it all the time on breaks and in the library and in the cafeteria. And I was really resistant to the cell phone free initiative. Like I was actually really against it at first. I also remember who I was when I opened up that email, sitting at my desk, like dusting off my computer at the end of the summer, and I opened the email and it was very shocking. But it's actually been like not bad, and there's a lot of good that's come out of it. So yeah, I mean, there's good and bad, but mostly good, I would say.
Has it made you reconsider your relationship with social media? Or do you just do more of that after school?
Yeah. I can say one thing, it's really nice to, I feel like you have a blank slate at the end of the day, or not the end of the day, after school, like I'll get home and I'll get out of school and open my phone and I'll have like 8 minutes of screen time for the whole day at 3 p.m. And that's really refreshing because sometimes I would come home from school and I'd already have like an hour, 2 hours on my phone after just being in school all day. So it's really nice, especially like being an athlete now. I play tennis, so it's in season. When I get home from practice, I'll have like, I'll only been on my phone for like 45 minutes a day or something, or especially a match. I'm on my phone for like an hour, 2 hours max every day, which is really different from how much I was on my phone before. So it's really nice to just have like that break and not be on your phone as much. And I think we can all agree it makes you feel good about yourself. Like being on your phone a lot doesn't make you feel good about yourself. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, personally, I'm not on social media a lot anyways. I'm definitely on it. Like I'll definitely, send some funny videos to my friends and whatnot. But I think so one thing that's interesting to me, so I play hockey. And we don't have a rink here, so we have to drive to Ridgefield in the season. And I remember as a freshman and sophomore, I was sitting in the back of junior and seniors' cars, and we were kind of on our phones. Like the person driving would maybe try to make conversation every now and then because obviously it could be scrolling on TikTok or whatever. But it kind of fell on deaf ears, and kids in the back were kind of on their phones because it carries over from school. If you're accustomed to being able to check this and check that whenever you want. Or watch this video, you get in the car on the way to practice, on the bus on the ride home, it stays with you. And now I'm a junior and I'm driving kids to practice, like stop at Dunkin' Donuts, do whatever. And it's so different even in that small environment. The 4 or 5 people in my car will all be having a conversation. Like people get out of school, check their phone, see, oh, here's my ride, all right, time to go. Or like on the bus to games even, like so many or so less people are on their phones, like so few kids are on their phones now, going to events or even at things like other sporting events like basketball games and things like that. Kids are interacting more outside of school, and I think it is because of the fact that we don't have that access to our phones during the day, so we're kind of accustoming our brains to the realization that, hey, I don't need to be looking at the screen all the time. I don't need to be checking this and knowing everything that's going around. I can just enjoy my company and enjoy the people around me. So I got off topic from your social media question there, sorry. But yeah, I think it really carries over from school to outside, and that's something that wasn't, I think, directly set in these goals, because obviously, as the Board of Ed, you can only really control so much about what happens outside of school. But it's been, I would say, for me at least, an unexpected impact.
I was initially very worried about my cell phone use being then an uptake in it outside of school, because the main goal of high school is to then prepare you for college and the world beyond. So in college, obviously you have access to your phones, you're paying for these classes. The professors aren't going to care if you're sitting in the back of class on your phone. That's on you. So I was really worried how I would take that for myself. Oh, if I don't have it in high school, but I have it then, am I going to be on it all the time? But I think having this has kind of taught me that I don't need it all the time, and I can really only use it for its main purpose, which is to talk to my friends, or if I need to call my mom about something, I'll talk to her. But I found that I don't really need to be scrolling social media all the time, which I think has been really great.
Do you guys have any plans next year to change the application of the policy? Do you have any fear or mitigation strategies for that whole kind of slippery slope of the fatigue, right? The fatigue of trying to implement a policy like this, I can imagine can be a lot.
right? So, is that something you guys talk about?
Yeah. I mean, we wanna, we didn't know if we'd get to this yet, but we'll show it to you just since you're asking the question. And then I just wanna make sure the student have a chance. They waited so long. I didn't tell them it'd be this late. So we're done. You guys get to go like I told you, right? So, Heather, we've had some conversations and, we're always talking as an admin team. So, kind of, what comes next. And these were other relevant highlights. We can kind of maybe skip over those, but you get a flavor for that. Teacher time saved. I think that second quote was Grace, if I recall, during the visit where you said, it's so great to not have to worry about people filming me or taking, was that you? Wasn't it? I mean, that I thought was interesting. You like, I don't want to go in the bathroom, somebody filming me, so the assemblies and the large meetings, we've had packed auditoriums, the phones, you don't have to say, put your phones away. I haven't seen a single phone during those. We used to have kids in the middle of rows and you're trying to get to them. So, for example, and then we will make a plea to our parents next year, Heather, for example, not saying you, but you're asking the question. I love your daughter. No, we do want to.
Them in the middle of the day.
One of the things we're going to emphasize next year in all sincerity is that, when we deal with these infractions, it's often, we call the parents like, listen, what time was that? And we have the exact time because we recorded it all on a data sheet and the parents like, that was me. I was interacting about whatever, a dentist appointment, whatever. And we understand families are busy, but we're going to try to encourage families to, that'll be one of the points we'll make next year is really, let's all try to double down and make it work. And then couple things we're thinking about, we want to do this really, really well. I think we've had a good launch in year one. We're not even a year in, right? We started in a delay, but we want to try to get it better. And I think that's through building the students' understanding of the potential impact and benefits of this to them in those aforementioned 4 goals. So we'll try the educational piece, right? Is just so critical here. During our grade level assemblies next year, I think we'll take a little bit of a different approach. Actually, I think even maybe some of these students may be willing to come in and talk to the freshmen about the benefits that Zach was talking about that recently at exec board. So just sharing your wisdom, be open-minded, give this a chance. These are some of the benefits that we've perceived. So I think we'll take a look at the consequences. Right now there are really no consequences on the first offense except taking the phone for the day, which the infraction could occur at 2:00 and you have to wait 2:55. We're going to take a look at that. I'm not going to get more specific here, but I think that may be worth considering when 237 students most of them, by the way, are first offenses. When we talk to those other schools, the principal's like, well, we had a student with 14, we had students with 9, and we're like, Amy and I got off the phone, we're like, okay, we're not doing too poorly. We want to do this well for our students, right? So
a follow-up question
sure.
The students about that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's still a decent cohort of kids that are getting away with having their phones out and they're just not and then they do it so much and some of the staff or whatever are so fatigued from telling these kids to put their phone away that they've given up?
I think everyone has by now their own way of handling the cell phone. I think cell phone free is the main thing. I really don't think people are on their phones that much. I mean, there are times when during downtime, out people, there are certain areas in the school where you will maybe see some phones, but I haven't heard any teachers in my classes have to tell a kid to put their phone away. Since it's been implemented, because that would be very risky. I don't think people would want to do that.
Right, they don't wanna lose their phone.
Yeah, you don't wanna lose your phone. So what's your question again?
No, I was
I don't think
wondering
teachers
if there was a sentiment of because I would say and you would probably agree with this, 99% of your kids are they're rule followers, right? They want to do well. They want to be in there. We're so fortunate to have a community that really values the education, right? So I was just curious if there was a kind of a small group of kids that were basically doing what they wanted and there was no consequences.
Is there much mirroring of your phone on your MacBook going on?
I mean, I personally don't have a Mac, so I don't have that issue, but I do think kids are a lot more focused in class. But to answer Mrs. Bree's question, I think it's gotten to the point where it's shocking, you're in visible shock when you see a phone. It's what are you doing? And
That's great.
at the end of the day, it's on that person. They're the ones that are going to get in trouble. They're the ones that are going to have to make that call home or have to bring their phone to the office for, is it a week? like unlike the second and third offense.
Is that one of the
Third offense.
consequences?
Third offense.
Yeah. Second, the parent has to come in and pick it up, and that happens. But we don't have a lot of multiple offenders, I say. Liam, keep going.
Yeah, no, but I think it's just gotten to the point where we're in such a habit of doing it, and we understand that we don't really need these devices as much as we thought we did. Because we've never really known any better. Our parents kind of just handed us our phones and we're like, here, do what you want.
I'm really curious to follow
Your
a
parents did
cohort
not
of
say that.
students.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'd be curious to follow a cohort of students over the summer. To see like what the summer looks like for you
Yeah.
guys.
I think personally, I'm probably just gonna be on my phone to text my friends to go hang
Yeah.
out. That's all I'm gonna be. honestly.
That's great.
I loved, Grace, when you said like you feel better about yourself. And I feel like when you feel better about yourself, you do better and in everything that you're confronted with, from the classroom to, you know, the field to your interpersonal relationships. So I just, you know, in terms of like being in a community and thinking about wellness, I just think that's a tremendous, you know, that in and of itself, just it's really a great accomplishment, I think, for all of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. You pulled off a really big thing. And you were very hesitant to do it. Yeah.
The competitive side of me loves that other school systems around us are now.
Of course it is.
Dylan is always a leader.
Absolutely. And we have so many things to be proud of, but this is one for me. I'm so proud of our town and everybody from this.
And anybody I talk to outside of this town, you
Yes.
know, even with young kids, when I tell them what we've done, they are delighted that there's this effort to just get away from them and all the, you know, we all know kind of the ramifications of what it can do, the harm it can bring. And so this is just a huge step in the right direction. Can you just tell me the consequences of what happens when a kid messes up once, messes up twice, messes up 3 times?
Dr. Corn?
So the first time, usually a staff member brings a phone to the office. If one of us is not available, which is often, it stays in the office till the end of the day. And then we make a phone call with the student to their family and explain that they have a first time cell phone violation and what happens the second time. Second time, similarly, it's usually brought down by a staff member. We call home and then the parent has to come pick it up, which they don't like because they get very inconvenienced by that. And then the third time, we also call home and then we start with consequences of 2 to 4 detentions typically. And we really haven't gotten beyond that. And a parent also has to come pick it up that time. But we really have not gone further than that. Kids don't like it. Parents don't like having to pick it up. I had a parent that actually left a phone over the break because they were so frustrated with their child for having a second violation. They said, it's gonna stay in the school for April break.
I love that.
Okay. So it's been successful.
Yeah.
The parents have been so supportive, I have to say. For the
I'm
most
sure they
part.
see happier kids.
Yeah,
Kids that aren't, you know.
and I would anticipate just gonna get happier.
Yep.
To have their kids.
In the
feeling good.
school, like for you guys, some of the kids that were very adamantly against it, is it kind of moved to a place where, yeah, we're still not okay with it, but it's not such a big deal? Or, you know, is the sentiment like, it's just, you know, tacit kind of whatever to it? Or is there still kind of, you know, that bold?
I can kind of speak to this because I really was the person who was like really against it, more so than most of my friends. And I was trying to use my position on the exec board. I was like, don't worry, like I'll be there, I'll get it, I'll make sure it doesn't happen. We had a meeting. I was obviously unsuccessful, but that's okay. We had a meeting where we talked about it at the executive board, and I like had my points I was gonna make. I was all prepared. So I was pretty like not looking forward to having the cell phones, not in school or in the honor pouches. But now, I mean, you've all heard, but I think it's not like, I would say I've come to enjoy it, and people who, like anyone who isn't happy with it has probably found their way to deal with it and have their whatever they need to have their phone, like they've probably found their way to deal with it. And I don't think there's anyone who's still like protesting. Like
No.
if you are, it's kind of, I don't think anyone's doing that because there's no reason to really.
That's what I like. Have people seen that? Like, it's not kind of
Yeah,
work.
it's not something we talk about anymore. Like I never talk about it with my friends anymore. It doesn't come up really.
I
Unless we're like,
remember-
oh, remember this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
like cut you
no,
off, but
I'm done.
I remember within like 15 minutes of the email coming out that people were already posting on social media about how to
Sure.
get around. Like,
It must have just blown up.
yeah, but now it's just like, I think we've understood that this is for us and this is like being implemented for a reason, and how we can actually benefit from it. And I think just looking on like the bright side of that is super important, and understanding that this is, but it is and has been super like beneficial for us.
So how did you find that? How did you figure that out? Did you know that right away, that it was for you, that it was going to benefit you?
Took time.
No.
Yeah, it just took time.
So it just took time and sort of an experience of not having the phone?
Yeah, and just like seeing that the results come, like you feel more engaged in class, and then the grades start to come too, and you see your participation grade go up. You see you're actually taking in the material and understanding it, and not just like, what did I just learn, and then going on your phone to try and see what you learned. So I think just seeing the results just feels really good, and understanding that like, yeah, this is for us.
And I think that's a really good question. Like, I really do like that question of, do you see that it's for you and not something that the administrators are just pushing on you? And I think at the beginning, that was kind of the general sentiment. People are, if I'm sure some of you are parents, and you've said to your kid or anyone, you've heard someone say, oh, you're always on your phone, or you're addicted to your phone, and the kids, no, I'm not. Like, and I think that's kind of everyone's reaction when anyone kind of, I don't want to say accuses, but says something like that to them. And that's, I think, was the general sentiment from the kids at the start, or from the students at the start of the thing. It's, we don't really see a problem here. And I think that one of the goals about like, it was I'll say like negative student interaction, I'll say dealing with social media, especially that was kids were just like, we don't really see how this is going to solve that. Like, a lot of it happens outside of school, but now I think students are experiencing the more positive environment. They're experiencing, like Liam said, the better grades, the better engagement in class, and it's kind of the I told you so moment from administration. They've been telling us this all along, saying this is for you, this isn't for us. I mean, obviously it's gonna help the teachers, but it's for the students, it's for your mental health, it's for your just enjoyment of being at school. It's making it a good environment where people want to come and want to stay, want to learn, see their friends. And it was hard to see that at first, because I think people are kind of caught up in this craze of, how do I get around it? Like, I need my phone. And once that kind of washes away, then I think students have really seen the benefits of it. And we've realized that it is for us.
And I think Zach brought up a really important question, point about the teachers, how this is kind of, before there were teachers, it was like up to them to use the phone caddies. And that kind of takes away from their job as teachers. They're becoming, they have
Policemen.
they have to police the phones. And I remember vividly during the Weston and Darien, when they came, Senor Hernandez, who I had last year, spoke about how she's just like ecstatic about this. She was a really big pusher for it, and I now understand why, because teachers can just be teachers, and then the students can just be students and actually do their job and learn, which has been just great.
I think also briefly, I wanted to add on. You had asked when did you realize it was good? I think the main point of that is I think we all all teenagers don't really like to be told what to do. And even though you hear 100 times oh, it's for your mental health, for your grades, for your social life, I think that each student just has to come to realize that for themselves. And that'll happen at a different time for everybody. For some people it's really quick, for some people it takes longer, but I think there's no specific moment. It's just when you stop thinking about your phone, I would say. And yeah, as much as probably all want to say I told you so, I think you have to let people realize it for themselves. And I don't know, just, yeah, come to realize that for themselves, so like, oh, even though they might never admit it, like maybe the phone, it's good to not be on your phone.
It sounds like there's a consensus amongst a lot of you that this was a good idea and that this has been a beneficial idea for you.
There's still, I'm gonna say, some stragglers.
Of course.
And you're always gonna have that, no matter what change you make to
And this
the,
was a big change.
yeah, this is,
Huge.
yeah, probably the biggest thing that have or will happen in at least our 4 years of high school. It's very interesting, I think, from the perspective of a junior specifically. And I mean, every grade has their own thing. We've been through 2 years, two and a little bit of having our phones and making this change now and kind of thinking ahead, what's gonna happen our senior year. I think that was a big worry from students as well, because I think the senior year is kind of this like experience that people wanna have, there's the senior experience is, coming up shortly where students get to go and do their trip and do their research and things like that. So I think as juniors, there were a lot of stragglers in our grade, and I know we weren't listed in the 2 classes that had a lot of like infractions, but I think it was because we kind of made that switch pretty quick. And the people who at first might have felt like Grace and might have felt so against it, tried to fight it. And for the first little while when I saw that email, I was like, this is gonna be annoying. I wasn't like, I'm gonna, hate this and hate the school. But those students, I think, like Grace said, like it takes their own time and it takes the experience. But I don't think you're never gonna 100% get full support, and that's for anything, and that's not gonna change.
Yeah, I think also a point I wanted to come back to is what you had said about like the screen mirroring. That's probably what I would say the hardest part is. I don't have a MacBook, so I can't, text or anything. And it is sometimes really hard to see, like in one of my classes, there's someone who sits right in front of me, and I always see the Instagram on their page of them texting their friends. And like I try not to look at it, but there's a part of me that I'm like, oh, like that could be me texting away, going on Instagram. But it's hard. I mean, the simple solution is just close your computer. If the teacher just said like, oh, everyone close their computer, then it would be gone. But I don't know what to really do about that. I don't know how you would really control it. Maybe just teachers being a little bit more strict about how you use your technology. But that's probably the hardest thing, is just like
seeing other kids have the availability and you not.
You guys have validated one of my deep hunches, and it's the way you've come home to appreciating the reason for the policy change. You said it for more than half an hour now, described a range of personal benefits that you've experienced. And I think my hope, because there's only so much, the adults can do with the finger wagging and policy enforcement. But my hope is over time that more of your peers will come around to really truly experience the benefit of the change. For me, the big picture here is the pernicious dependence that we all experience with these devices. And we obviously can do something about it, and we're trying. And so thank you for being marvelous, insightful, brilliant,
and honest.
Just sharing. This is a wonderful. Thanks for not editing my abs. He would never do that. His sister would.
No, thank you for joining us tonight, and for all the work that you do with your friends and in the school, and I know on the exec committee. And I know that if you guys come across any other ideas or solutions, you know who to go to share them with. So really appreciate it. It's getting late.
Yeah. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, we have just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 policies to go through on the agenda. Their second read. I don't think we've received any questions about them, so we can start with 4115.2, which is administrative regulations regarding concussion management and training for athletic coaches. Are there any questions or comments about this policy? Yes.
No.
Sorry. I'm like, sorry, I hang on out of my peripheral vision. Is there a motion to approve policy 4115.2?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second? Thank you, Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
With this next one?
Yeah, I want to table it.
Yeah, I think, let me just offer
Yeah.
a comment. I don't have any concerns about this policy. It's a recommended policy from our attorneys. So I've like, it's pretty standard. I was surprised that we actually didn't maintain it already. But just in light of the comments we heard, I'm
Yeah.
happy to just go back and spend some more time and better understand and, have some more conversation.
And I would echo your thoughts as it came through the policy committee, but yes, we'll put it aside for now. Policy 4120, reports on suspected abuse or neglect of adults and with an intellectual disability or autism spectrum disorder. Are there any questions or comments on this policy? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve policy 4120?
Motion.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nicola. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Policy 5131.61, chemical health policy for student athletes. Are there any questions or comments on this policy? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve policy 5131.61?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. Second, Lori, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, carries unanimously. And finally, policy 6172.6, remote learning and credit for online courses. Are there any questions or comments on this policy? Is there a motion to approve policy 6172.6?
Motion.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Are there any comments from the public? Just bring everyone's attention to future business. Annual town meeting is May 6th at 7 p.m. here in the Clune Center. Then we will have a regular meeting on May 15th at 7 p.m. And then we all have a Board of Education meeting on June 5th. Right now it says 7 p.m., but that'll go out for 6 p.m. On the notice, and we'll make a note of that as we get closer. Meeting adjourned at 9:03.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.